this morning. Thanks to all of you who've come out. Thanks to you who view the streams. We appreciate your support. And of course, today, June 15th, 2025, the year is quickly moving on. But thank the Lord, today is Father's Day, and we do want to give out a hearty, happy Father's Day to each one of you and pray that you're blessed in the Lord. If you do happen to watch this after this, and it's no longer Father's Day, I still hope that if you're a father, you feel blessed to be a child of God and to have children that the Lord has blessed us with. We're in Ephesians chapter 6. I often, when you have such a large subject like this, the subject of the Father, because if you go to any kind of electronic resource, I don't know that I would encourage too much of trying to do it just through a concordance. But if you do any kind of electronic resource and you search the Bible for the word Father, you're going to get thousands upon thousands of results, because it is everywhere. It is all over the Bible. It is a very, very large fact that the role of a father is one of the greatest roles in the world. Besides, I would say the two greatest roles that a person can have, and obviously differing only by gender, are the role of father and the role of mother. The two most major roles that a person can ever face in life. And so when we look at this subject this morning, the subject being simply this: Father, bring up the child. Fathers, bring up the child. I cut the title off there because it would have been quite long if we would have finished the verse. But in Ephesians chapter 6, we find really one of the strongest commands to a father. And so let's look at Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 1. I would encourage every child to memorize this verse. When I was in kindergarten, I remember they had a large number of verses. It was the ABCs of Bible verses. Now, a lot of them were only half verses or part of the verse, but I remember the letter C was this particular verse, Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 1. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Now, I will tell you just quickly, and we're not going to focus on this verse too much, but I would tell you quickly that the child is an amazing thing, and I'll tell you why. Because they get to participate in both Mother's Day and Father's Day. All right, most of the time, now there are, sad circumstances where that's not possible, but for the most part, the child gets to participate in Mother's Day and Father's Day. And so I know that our children are obviously quite young. Lily's 2. Izzy's not quite 1 yet. She's getting a little closer to 1. But they're still very young. I know that they don't understand it all, but they get to participate in both days. They get to make things for my wife. Of course, Izzy's probably a little young to make too much, but Lily especially, make things for my wife. She's very excited usually about Mommy's flowers. She always likes flowers. And I'm sure I know Lily just the other day on one of her she has a little speech thing that she does on Mondays. She made a little craft, says Dad. The children get to participate in it, and it's a wonderful thing. And we very strongly, this is a verse that every child should know. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And this is true. Children should obey their parents. Thank the Lord. Verse 2 says, honor thy father and thy mother, which is the first commandment with promise. Once again, the main verse being verse 3. But this is very good. This is the whole family here. We have father, mother, child. What does the child do? Honor their father and their mother. They obey their parents. And it's a commandment with promise. If you're a child, now of course obviously some of us are older children than others. Technically I'm a child. My father, obviously getting closer to middle age here. Thank the Lord for my father and his work for the Lord. Always had a strong testimony about God's work in his life. But it does tell us that if we honor our father and mother, that it's a commandment with promise. The Bible is very clear that if you honor your parents, that the Lord will bless you with a long life. That is the 5th commandment of the 10 commandments. Honor thy father and thy mother. And in verse 3, it says, verse 3 goes along with verse 2. I apologize, I just told you what the promise was, and verse 4 is the focus. Verse 3, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. That's the promise. Honor your father and mother. Finally, in verse 4, and ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. The father sets the example for the entire family. Sets the example. You will find throughout all of history that fathers set the example. A father even sets the example when he's not there. You know, I find fatherhood a bit difficult to talk about because I see what's going on in America. There are a lot of fathers. They're not dads at all, to be honest. They've abandoned their families. You see the father that has a child with a woman and he's falling away. You know what? It has an impact on that family. It'll have an impact on that child's life forever. Whether or not the father is even just sometimes in the life, maybe they're getting passed back and forth between mom and dad, between families. It'll have an impact though. Because you know what happened? That child will get older. Whether or not it's a girl or a boy, they'll get older. And forever they're going to think about the father that abandoned them. The father that didn't care. The father that wasn't there for them. And sadly this morning, the reason, in a lot of ways, this isn't the only reason, but this is a very strong reason. One of the reasons that there are so many criminal acts in America today is because there was no father. There was no father. And they seen what their dad did, and they followed down that same path. Left their family. Many times there's a lot of domestic violence that goes on. Seen mommy and daddy fighting all the time. Gotten the same thing. Little girls, the same thing. They'll grow up and they don't know what they're looking for in their father. They don't know what they're looking up in their dad. They'll get hooked up with just about anything. It's a sad thing. But it's the reality of the example of the father. Now let me tell you what happens if you follow this. If you follow what this verse says to do. Because it says in verse 4, fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Now, there is a very healthy balance for every father out there. Right? A very healthy balance. Because there's this fact that we want our children to obey. All right, this is good. The very first verse of the Bible, of this chapter, said, children, obey your parents in the Lord. And so there's this part, we're trying to bring things into line. Right? This same thing happens even in the husband and wife relationship. The father trying to bring things into line, you have to be very careful how you treat your family. And the Bible says specifically, provoke not your children to wrath. So you know what we want to do? We want to correct, we want to help, but we don't want to push them so hard. We don't want to provoke them to wrath. You know, I've seen this happen so many times, even in, Christian homes, where a son or a daughter has been pushed away from the Lord because really their father provoked them to wrath. They were so hard, they were so strong, and you see it drive the child away. Drive the child away. Soon they've left the church. They leave out the Bible. They leave out God. They go off on their own road. They don't want what their father had because it was so strong and so hard. And so I challenge every father that hears this message not to be so strong and hard-handed. You drive your children away. Or even for that matter, sometimes drive the wife away. Yes, we want there to be a control. Yes, we want there to be obedience, and there definitely has to be punishments and things. I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be, but I'm saying be very, very careful. Because the next word in here is the word nurture. Nurture. Now, nurture is kind of a big word, one that we wouldn't use often. All right, I know that maybe if we were thinking about the word nurture, something that we would maybe be able to really gather onto. I'd like you to think about a plant. A plant. I don't know if you've ever tried to grow any sort of plant. I have several times in my life. I know there was our neighbor was a gardener. His name was Bill. He allowed us to use a small portion of his garden every year, and we would plant different things. And when he harvested things, he had a very, very large gardens. Not just the one that he allowed us to use part of, but he had massive gardens across the hills. He had a ton of gardens. He would get all kinds of vegetables, but he would often give us things, green beans, corn, whatever. He would give us some stuff. And it was great, but when you're planting something, there's a nurture process that happens. Because right off the bat, it starts off as this little seed. It amazes me how God has planned this anyways, because you start off with this little seed. All right, you plant it in the ground. You can pick what seed: corn, green beans, watermelon, I don't know, broccoli, whatever you want to pick. You put it in the ground, and the first thing you have to do, you have to really till up the soil. You got to break it up. You got to make it where the seed can really get in a really good ground. A lot of times you're going to put some kind of fertilizer in there. You can pick what fertilizer you want to use, but some kind of fertilizer. You go past these cornfields or soybeans or whatever, all these different fields as you're driving down the highway, and you'll find something. You'll see little signs as you go on, and it will tell you what kind of fertilizer they're using. A lot of times they get a discount for that. Maybe what kind of fertilizer, what kind of what brand of seed it is. They'll put those up. You'll see those. You go down on the side. You'll see a name of a particular seed place because they're promoting them. And a lot of times they get a discount for doing it. All right, so you fertilize the ground. You break it all up. You got to water it. All right, that's just the first step. You get the seed in the ground. All right, great. All right, now we're going to compare this a little bit with children. All right, just for a moment. I know children are way, way, way more important than a plant. But there's a lot that goes along that's very similar. So, this child's born into our life. Thank the Lord. Like I said, my wife and I have 2 children. Hopefully you have children today if you've been blessed with them. Obviously, some of you may not be older yet. But you have a little child. He's born into the world. All the things that go into it now, especially when they're a little baby, you're doing all kinds of things. Trying to get them through that first step. That's one of the hardest steps. Getting the seed in the ground, breaking it up, getting the fertilizer. That's a hard step. It's a lot of work. All right? It takes a lot of manpower, a lot of times they use rotors and tractors and all kinds of things. But when a baby, you're sitting there, you're doing everything you can. You know, you're having to feed them all the time. You're having to formula. And you know what's happening a lot of times for the dad? See what's happening for the dad. Oh no, mom's obviously doing a lot of the heavy lifting as far as feeding the baby and making sure the diapers change. Obviously the dad's pitching in where he can. But I want to tell you what's happening. The dad is making the family go. You see, this is the reason why a father is so important. Is because he's making the family go. The reason why the mother, thank the Lord, can take care of her child, can feed him, can change his everything, is because guess what? In the background, there's the father. You know what he's doing? He's making the family grow. He's working hard for his family. He's got a job. He's making money. He's keeping things afloat. He's keeping things going. You know, a lot of times he's having to take care of more things. Why? The wife's more busy. The mom's more busy than what she normally is. Why? Because he has to take care of the kids. Here's the father. He's nurturing. He's trying to help. Trying to nurture his wife. Trying to nurture his kids. Trying to help people get through a very difficult time. And I know what it is. Obviously, my wife, just especially when we had little Izzy, you know, the first month or two, she was so tired. She could barely get anywhere. She's falling asleep. She's tired. She's trying to make it through. But you know, we got to be there. We got to be there to nurture, to help, to encourage her, to do what we can to help, to make sure that the bills are being paid, to make sure that there's food on the table. That's a massive role. The massive role the family, the father plays in to nurture and admonition. And guess what? He's nurturing. He's building. He's building the family. And guess what begins to happen? Children begin to grow. Children begin to grow. Mom's actually made it through a little bit of the hard time. It doesn't stop there, obviously. I understand. Kids get older. But now, finally, mom's being able to get a little bit more sleep. You know, there's naps that are happening. There's different things. The plant starts to shoot up. All of a sudden, well, it was just a little seed. You're like, is it going anywhere? Is it going anywhere? You think a little baby is in it. Is he going anywhere? Is he going to get teeth? Are they going to crawl? Are they going to talk? Are they going to walk? You know, you're like, same thing with the seed. Is it going anywhere? All of a sudden, out pops this little stem out of the ground. Seed's been in there. All of a sudden, it starts to grow. All of a sudden, you go, hey, wait, they're growing. They're growing. You know, our little girls, for a bit, you know, they can't crawl. You know, Izzy's been a little bit slow developing because she had hip dysplasia, but they get to where they can kind of sit up. Then they get to where they can crawl. They get to where they can walk, and all of a sudden they start to talk. Lily's been a little late on talking, but now she's really starting to talk. What happens? They're growing. They're getting older. And you're nurturing and you're building them. And as that plant begins to grow, guess what? It becomes very important that they get water. Very important. Very important that they get sunlight. You make sure that they're getting the things that they need. You know, if it's a real dry out, you got to put some water there. Sometimes you got to put some protection around it. You know, there's animals that'll get in and steal the crop. Maybe it's deer or rabbits, bugs. All right? There's all these kind of things. And you're raising up this child, and let me tell you, there's all kinds of things that can happen. But the father's got to be there to help and to build up, to stand behind, be there to give them a hug, to little Willie, she loves to get little kisses, to be there for them, spend time with them. You know why? Because we're nurturing them. We're nurturing them. We're trying to build them up. We're trying to help them. And as they get older, it becomes more and more important. You keep nurturing. You keep building. You try to teach them stuff. You try to help them with things. Why? You're nurturing them. And finally, nurture and admonition of the Lord. You're building them up. And I pray, nurturing them in the things of God. You know, get to come to church quite a bit. They haven't quite got all the, especially Lois, hasn't quite got all the obedience thing down as far as the church, but she's getting better at it. You bring them to church, let them know, growing in the Word, tell you about Jesus. Maybe it's just a little song. It's the Bible, you know, one of Lily's favorite songs, the B-I-B-L-E. She just likes to shout Bible. Know about the Bible, about prayer. Let her know, you know what? Your daddy prays, your daddy reads his Bible, your daddy loves God. That's important. That nurture, that build up in the Lord. Let them know about Jesus. Let them know about the cross. As they get older, they might know God. And not being so heavy-handed that we push them away. But the love of God being shown in our hearts. Because the second part of the nurture is admonition. You see, there are times where we have to intervene. Times when things don't quite go as they need to. You know, I was talking about a plant, and there are times when you have to intervene. You say, what do you mean by that? Well, you've probably heard of pruning, you know? I cut off certain parts. I know whenever we get my wife's flowers, all the time she got to prune them up a little bit. You get tickle parts. Why? So that they'll keep growing. So they won't die. You're trying to help them, but it's not exactly painless. As you're raising up your children, there are times where there's admonition. When they get in trouble, right? You've got to do things. But it's got to be in the Lord. You've got to love them, even when they're in trouble. Let them know you can't do this. You can't do this. Not to get away with it. There's going to be punishment. There's going to be discipline. Same way the Lord does with us so often. He says, he that hateth his child spareth the rod. So there is a time to act. There's a time when they get in trouble. There's a time when you wish set them on the right track. But it's because we have one goal in mind, that they would know God. And I want to tell you, if you'll remember the nurturer, you'll remember the love of God, your admonition will be out of love, and your child will still know that they're loved and cared for. And that the pruning is only happening because we want them to be stronger. We want them to know God. See, I get very concerned when there's not a father in a person's life. There's not the nurture and admonition. Not will someone to say, listen, you can't go this way is dangerous. You know, you try to teach your children, listen, this is hot. Don't touch it. This is too cold. Don't touch it. This will get you into trouble. Don't drive too fast. We'll get a ticket. Don't steal. Don't covet. See, what are you talking about the Bible? Honor mama and daddy. Listen to your mother. Listen to your father. When they get older, don't cheat. Don't cheat. Don't commit adultery. Find yourself a good person that loves God and don't cheat. Stay with him. You know what that is? That's the nurture and admonition. The nurture and admonition. I pray every father is nurturing and admonishing their children. They're nurturing them, they're raising them up to love God. They're not being so heavy-handed they push them away. But they're loving them and say, listen, I want you to follow my steps. They're being the example. They're helping the family go. They got a job. They're paying bills. I get it if you can't get a job. And some of you are a little older. I'm closing here. Some of that maybe listening say, listen, I'm way beyond that. Kids are all grown up. They're out of the house. Still a father. You say, well, how do I nurture and admonition? They're gone. They're 25, 30. I mean, they're doing their own thing now. 40. You know where the nurture and admonition comes in there. bring your prayers before God. Say, Lord, you know about little Susie, little Johnny. You know about him. Lord, help him. Help him to make the right decisions. Build him up in the Lord. Help him to trust in you. You pray for them. You hold on for them. I know my dad often gives a little call. How you doing? How you doing? What is it? It's the nurturer. Sometimes he had an issue. You know, he sees you doing something this way. But that may not be the best way to do it. Maybe we tried this way. Oh, that's happened so many times. Guys knew a better way. He said, listen, I know a better way. He's got a little more experience. Thank the Lord for that. That nurture. You know, the amount of times that my dad came and rescued me. I say rescued me because this kind of situation. We broke down somewhere. I remember it's been about 8 or 9 years ago now. It's been a minute. Maybe not quite that long. Maybe about 6 or 7. I don't know. I think it probably has been about 8 years ago. We were driving down to see my parents, and the alternator belt on our car broke. I hadn't changed the alternator on that car before, and it was actually very easy to change, but I didn't realize it actually changed alternators like belts like that before, but I didn't realize what kind it was. And the book for the car showed the wrong thing. I remember my dad's almost 3 hours away. What it was less than, I think about 2.5 hours. Comes out to where we're at to help us change the alternator. Thank the Lord we figured it out. We got it changed. Then the alternator actually went out about a week later, but we ended up changing the alternator. That time we did it, my wife and I did, but Lord rescued us. Why? He was nurturing us. He wanted us to know that he cared, that he loved us. And I would challenge every father this morning, nurture, admonition, love. Don't provoke them to wrath. Love them. Nurture them. Build them up. Be there for them. Be in their lives. Build your family up. And admonish when you have to. Keep things on the right path. Push them in the right direction. You know why? Because ultimately we want them to know God. And I pray that every father this morning, that their main goal, that everything they're working for is so that their children would know God. Thank the Lord. Thanks to all of you that come out. Thanks to you through the stream. I hope you have a happy Father's Day in the Lord. Be prayed up, blessed up, and ready to go. Have a wonderful afternoon.